Reform UK is delivering surprise after surprise, and the latest YouGov Times poll, which came out a short while ago this morning, must be delivering a seismic jolt to the British political landscape in all directions. Not only is it going to shatter the image that Farage is the popular vote winner for Reform UK, because he comes out as almost as unpopular as Keir Starmer, but at the same time, polls, Reform UK now polls at 25%, just a single point behind Labour at 26%, and ahead of the Conservatives, who languish in third place at 22%. And this marks the potential dawn of a three-party system in Britain, an outcome that both Labour and the Tories must view with equal parts alarm and disbelief. And this is extraordinary, more extraordinary, because the Reform Party has only got 5 seats in the parliamentary party, and therefore almost no right to speak in PMQs, almost no right to be represented in committees and so on. Something, of course, that they represent. And every single one of these polls demonstrates the inadequacy of the first-past-the-post system, which put Labour in such a strong position in the parliamentary party, and yet Labour doesn't even command a third of the votes in the country. And so while there was a poll just after Christmas which suggested that Labour was seriously languishing in support in the country, actually it was still retaining that 30-odd%. This poll is much more worrying because it demonstrates that Labour's base is scattering. The people who voted for Labour, who voted for that Labour landslide in 2024, the stark reality is that just 6 months into its tenure, Labour has generated significant voter attrition, with 17% of its 2024 electorate now unsure of its political allegiance. That is significant. Reform UK has siphoned off 5% of Labour's vote, and this is no accident. Farage's populist rhetoric taps into dissatisfaction over immigration, welfare spending, and a sense that Labour's out of touch with the everyday struggles of voters. Starmer's strategy has been to counter this threat with pragmatic policies to rebuild trust, promising cuts to welfare spending and adopting tougher stances on immigration, his immigration rhetoric. But frankly, it's not really going anywhere. And these moves are not likely to resonate with a disillusioned electorate. For many, Starmer's pivot risks actually alienating its Labour's progressive base while failing to appease the populist tide. Kemi Badenoch's Conservatives, meanwhile, face a dual challenge, retaining their traditional base while staving off Farage's relentless advance. And what Kemi Badenoch has done, or her decision, is to move to out Farage, which is absurd. And then Jenrick wants to out Badenoch. There's only so much room in the far left, in the far right. Only so much room. And we've got 3 people vying for control of that particular area: Badenoch, Jenrick, and Farage. And the blue rinse people in the middle of the Conservative Party feel abandoned, and they're looking around to see where they belong politically. Do they belong with the Lib Dems? Are they just going to soil their next ballot paper? Reform UK has supplanted the Tories as the preferred right-wing party among 18 to 20-year-olds and commands 30% of over 65-year-olds. The Conservatives' identity crisis, therefore, has deepened, with Badenoch struggling to reconcile her populist overtures with a party still tethered to its centrist past. The numbers are damning. 15% of Tory voters from 2024 have now defected to Reform UK, while only 4% of Reform voters are returning to the Conservative fold, proving that Badenoch is useless. This hemorrhaging of support underscores her inability to compete with Farage on his own terms, with Farage's bombastic charisma and anti-establishment brand. If Badenoch wants to reform the Conservatives, if Badenoch wants to save the Conservatives, she needs to move back to the centre, and fast, because she will be the last Conservative leader of any party that could possibly aim for the key of number 10. Reform UK's rise is a study in opportunistic populism. We haven't seen that since the 1930s, frankly. And Farage has harnessed a potent mix of dissatisfaction with the status quo and nostalgia for a more authentic Britain. His party appeals across age groups and demographics, and younger voters disenchanted with mainstream politics and older voters yearning for clear, decisive leadership are flocking to his cause. Because actually, he doesn't offer very much. What he offers is criticism, and criticism sells. And that incidentally, is pretty well what the Lib Dems have been offering for nearly a century. Criticism of the main parties. And when they were given the levers of power, they went to pieces under Nick Clegg. The threat of a Reform Conservative pact looms large, however. Historical precedent, the Brexit Party's 2019 electoral accommodation with Boris Johnson, suggests Farage could leverage his position for concessions, such as uncontested seats or even a formal alliance. Such a move would be catastrophic for Labour, uniting the populist right in a devastating electoral force and giving Farage potentially the keys to number 10. For Labour, the challenge is clear but daunting. Deliver tangible improvements in the economy, public services and voter confidence, and without demonstrable progress, their promise to finish the job in 2029 will ring hollow. For the Conservatives, the imperative is essential. They must redefine their identity, balance traditional Tory values with a credible response to the populist right, and failing this, they risk permanent relegation to third-party status, a fate unthinkable. I was going to say unthinkable just a decade ago, but actually unthinkable just a few months ago, just a year ago. For Reform UK, the path forward is fraught with opportunity and peril. While their rise is meteoric, sustaining momentum will require more than rhetoric, as, for example, Jeremy Corbyn found. Farage must prove that Reform can move from being a protest party to a viable contender for government. So what would he do if he were given power? What would he do? Because there is no clarity about what she would do, about what he would do. We know what Badenoch would do, sadly, and it's just more of the Priti Patel and Suella Braverman stuff. Britain stands on the cusp of a new political era, one defined by fragmentation and volatility. The traditional choice between Labour and Conservatives faces now an unprecedented challenge from Reform UK. And in the immediate future, if Reform UK siphons off enough members of the Conservative Party, the Lib Dems are poised to take over as His Majesty's loyal opposition. And that could be a revelation. In the silence that is generated by the noise from Reform and the Conservatives and Labour, the Lib Dems, if they are wise, are getting on with sorting out a clear manifesto, a clear plan, and positivity, which is lacking in all the other three parties. This could be the making of the Lib Dems, oddly. And the traditional choice, a toss-up between two parties, with the addition of the third, could actually benefit the fourth. And Reform UK, a party born of discontent and nurtured by Farage's unrelenting desire for power and approval, could actually find itself in the rump of Parliament, occupying the same space for the next century that has been occupied by the Lib Dems. For Starmer and Badenoch, the next election is not merely a contest of policies, but a fight for survival. And I think, at the moment, as long as Badenoch clings to power as the leader of the Conservatives, the party that will die is the Conservative Party. The stakes are nothing less than the future shape of British democracy.